to the Wednesday, October 12th, 2022 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Design Review Board. This meeting is held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and or the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct this meeting similar to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 877-852-5247 or toll free 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 974-6174-9412. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. The Design Review Board is a volunteer resident board appointed by the mayor and confirmed by City Council. The purpose of the Design Review Board is to foster excellence in the design of Ann Arbor's built environment and to advise applicants on how a project can meet the spirit and intent of the downtown design guidelines. First, the applicant will have 10 minutes to present their proposed project to the Design Review Board. Then the Design Review Board will hold a discussion on the design of the project. Following the presentation and discussion, members of the public are permitted to comment for up to 3 minutes. Hey, Jeff, ready for roll call?
Ready for roll call?
Yep.
Board member Burns. Member Cooper.
Present.
Member Singleton.
Present.
Member Kinley.
Present.
Member Mitchell.
Present.
Member Kotarski.
Present.
Member Perkins. Member Ramson. You have a quorum.
I am here, by the way. I couldn't find the unmute button.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Tamara.
So next up is approval of the agenda. Anyone like to move to approve that?
I will.
I move. A second.
Second. All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Next up, approval of the minutes from the July 13th, 2022 Design Review Board meeting. Anyone move to approve? Got one. Got a second out there? Got it. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay. Next up, regular business. So we're ready for 121 Catherine Street.
We're gonna promote the panelists. Courtney may need a minute or two to get everyone on the Zoom call. But the petitioners will have up to 10 minutes to give a presentation. And they also can show slides, which I believe they're planning on doing. Once folks are promoted into the meeting, the individual who's going to be running the slideshow can put that together and start the slideshow. And then I believe Jennifer Hall is going to start off with a few remarks, and then there will be, I think, an architect from LBBA who will be sharing their screen and walking us through the visual images. And I think that is Jack Schroeder. So that's what I know. Let me pause here to see if Jennifer can tell us whether your full, if you can tell whether your full team is on the call or whether we still need to wait for another minute. It looks like we're still in the process of promoting.
The only person I don't see is Darren McKinnon, but everybody else is on, and he's just here to answer questions, so we can absolutely get started.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
Great. So Jennifer, one of your team members may want to share their screen. And while they're doing that, you can start the presentation off by, if you'd like, or whomever is going to start us off with a little background and a short presentation on what the history of the project is, and then we can walk through the slides, and whomever is going to be describing the slides can then describe them.
Okay, great. Since we only have 10 minutes, I'm going to do a quick overview. On our team, we have two architects, Ashley Wendella and Jack Schroeder from Land & Bone Baker, Donald Wesley, Wendy Carty Saxon, and Aubrey Patino with Avalon Housing, Darren McKinnon with DMC, and I think that's it on here. To answer the question about Jess Lita, she is actually part of a consulting group, YMJ, that's doing part of our community engagement, and we might have folks that want to speak from our Community Leadership Council that we've been working with. It might also be on the call. And so this project at Catherine is one of 10 city-owned sites. The city is asking the Housing Commission to develop as affordable housing. So I think this is the second site we brought to the Design Review Committee. We brought 350 South 5th, I think, a year or so ago. So this is our second site. This is a much smaller project. It's a 6-story, 67 unit with on-site community space as well, and some public parking. And I'm going to let the architects talk about the actual design itself. But the one thing about this building that's different than the 350 South 5th is that being a historical Black neighborhood and Black business district, we are working very closely with folks who used to live in this neighborhood and folks who still live in this neighborhood to make sure that we are both celebrating and honoring the history of what happened in this neighborhood, as well as support folks that are still living in this neighborhood in the Black community. And so there's people who might be here to talk about that. I can't tell who's in the audience. And I will turn it over to Ashley and Jack to show the actual design of the building.
Are you able to share your presentation, Jack?
I am working on it.
Okay.
Can you all hear me too? Sorry, I'm scrambling a bit here.
Yep, Jack, we can hear you.
While they're bringing this up, then I will further give more information till the presentation is up. The reason Avalon Housing is also on this call is they're co-developing the site with us. And all of the units are affordable to households at up to 60% of median income, and Avalon will be providing the on-site services at the site as well. Okay, you guys are on, Jack.
Okay, and you guys can see the kind of aerial view that we're looking at. Okay,
yep.
Great.
Yep.
First off, just thanks for having us and for your consideration. Excited to share the project with all of you. Jennifer hit some of these points. We're at the corner of 4th and Catherine in Carytown District. 6 stories proposed and 67 new units of housing, 57 of which are 1-bedroom, 10 of them will be efficiencies or studios. And the parking on site, we're currently at 18 spaces, and this is meant to offset some of the lost parking that is part of the development. We really like the aerial view here. It kind of speaks to the scale and density of the surrounding area. It's obviously a really vibrant urban space. Our time on site has been really great, sort of walking around and getting a feel for it. And we feel like our proposal fits in, but is still new, is still an addition, is still modern. A few photos, I'm sure you're all well aware of the space, but just to kind of walk through it really quickly, this is the alley behind our site off of Catherine. This is the view along Catherine. Obviously, it's just a parking lot now with the city. There's these low brick knee walls. And then 4th Ave is the historic brick street with the 2 entry points to the existing parking lot, and we're eliminating one of those. And these are just more kind of broad context the idea of scale, the idea of material, even the way the sort of openings march down the facades was something we were, looking to kind of pull from, not necessarily replicate, but have a similar kind of rhythm at our street front. And jumping into some imagery, we have masonry up to the 3rd floor, and then the building steps back. And then the additional 3 stories above are sort of more modern, as you can see, a mix of white and some kind of bright pop of color. At the base, we know that we're kind of a larger building filling up this corner, so we've broken the mass of that brick portion down in different spots along the facades. And this is that kind of repeating window bay. We've made the windows bigger, a little more modern, a little newer, but we're still kind of doing this repetitive rhythm. Obviously, we're doing as much storefront as we can at the base, acknowledging, the vibrancy of the surroundings. Yeah, and I'll keep marching through here. This is kind of a little bit more above our site. This highlights the roof deck and community room that the residents will get to use. Kind of rare in affordable housing, but we're actually providing some private porches and obviously the shared porch. People will be able to access these lower pieces as well. So we love the idea of providing some connection to the exterior for these future tenants. This is maybe a little overambitious on the solar up here. Once we finish our mechanical design, we'll see where we land. But obviously the building is going to be all electric, highly sustainable. Partially to fit within Ann Arbor's guidelines, but we're striving to take it even further. So we're really excited about that as well. Just to jump into the site plan and planning a little bit, the front corner is the resident sort of public and shared space. Both are entered off of Catherine. This just has fitness, community space, supportive services, offices, kind of all the things that the residents that live above will need. The lavender space here is the future question mark space that Jennifer was describing, that we're working with the local group to decide what the best and highest use for this space will be. But it's going to be sort of outside of the resident uses, or could be isolated from the resident uses. We pulled the building back off of Catherine a little bit, just to provide a little more kind of breathing room there. It also helps us with our open space. But we think there's some opportunity for, whatever activities are there to spill out onto the sidewalk over time and enliven that stretch. We've studied multiple kind of site layouts, parking layouts, and have landed on this kind of straight shot through off of 4th through the alley. The parking as it's drawn now is going to be all public. Even though it's kind of within our building, it's really meant to serve the Carytown district, the larger district. And we have this kind of connecting path that will let out towards the market. Obviously, we'll meet all of the EV charging requirements and EV ready requirements. So moving up through the building, these are the elevators at the main level. Get you up to the 2nd and beyond. As I said earlier, there's mostly 1-bedroom units with a few efficiencies that kind of sprinkle throughout the building. Shared laundry. 3rd floor is nearly identical. We added one bedroom. And then you see at the 4th is where the space starts to step back. And this is where the sort of rain screen, the white facade starts at the 4th level. And continues to march up through the building, obviously doing our best to stack and be efficient with the structure and how the building will work. And then landing at the 6th floor, and this is where you see this community building that spills out onto the roof deck with a shared restroom at this end. Blow up of the typical residential units. There's some fluctuation, but these are kind of the simplest plans. Modest, efficient plans, but also give a nice sense of home. Like I said, the one bedroom has the porch here, a lot of light, this kind of shared open living and kitchen space. And likewise in the efficiency, there's a little bit of a kitchen bath zone, and then as you get out towards the facade, there's some nice light and a large open space. In the elevations, there's not much more to talk about than what I was kind of walking through with the 3D imagery. This just gives you a sense of the masonry up to that third level, and then this portion above. Here's your roof deck. The roof facade, we're kind of expecting that we'll go to more of the material that's cladding the upper floors. At our side facades, we're dealing with being pretty directly adjacent to the neighboring property. So we've got some fire considerations. So these facades do end up being pretty solid, but we do still want, this nice cladding. And then, we're even sort of picking up on some of those bay moves, just through masonry relief at the sides. Building section, mostly this just shows we're proposing a basement for service space, storage, all the things that these buildings don't always have. This is a little additional breathing room, we think, so they can continue to use the space well. Here's the step back, roof deck. Just gives you a little sense of how the building will work. And then I wanted to share with the group, the renderings that we showed were from a previous package that we had sent to Jeff. This one updates and shows that parking entry on this side. As you guys probably know, the site plan's ever evolving.
Yeah.
So,
Jack, we're still seeing your Bluebeam screen.
Which screen?
The building section.
Oh. Okay.
1 minute remaining.
Do you see this
There it is.
image?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better.
This is just an up-to-date image that we, just kind of hot off the presses. So this shows the parking entry and the storefront wrapping around onto Catherine. Just a few small updates to what you saw in the package that we delivered to Jeff. And then I know there's some question of fiber cement as a acceptable or non-acceptable material. I will try to rush here. Are you all seeing this image? It's a different building? No? This is interesting.
We're just seeing the rendered up-to-date version. Okay, that's...
So this is a project that we did recently, and we just wanted to show you quickly that what we're proposing is not a hardy type board or hardy plank. It's a open system, likely a Swiss pearl or
Silbonnet.
Silbonnet is a product that we use, but it's a cleaner system. There's a rain screen behind it. It's an integral system. It's not painted, highly durable. So we just had a couple of examples, and we can discuss that further with your comment. This is some more images, and we're happy to share even more if that helps. But and I think that's it.
Okay, as we head into discussion, I imagine it will be useful to be able to return to the pages of the presentation, Jack. So you may just want to kind of get that up and ready. So as the discussion goes, we're kind of looking at what we're talking about. Does anybody want to start off the review board discussion?
I guess I'll start by saying that the staff comments mentioned the windowless facades on the north and the west. And I was wondering what your response to that is and what your thoughts are.
We actually
Yeah.
want to reserve that space for some kind of art. There's some, I'll let the architects talk about the building reason for it, but we actually don't want to leave it exactly how it is. We want it as a future art project.
Are stairs moved to those two sides as well in plan, you know, and we're also dealing with kind of a higher level of fire rating at those 0 lot line conditions. So we could penetrate those. We'll have to look at, you know, much higher rated glazing. You know, our tact was kind of to make those solid and, you know, like Jennifer said, hopefully use those for some form of public art. And, you know, we're not going to downgrade any of the material. It'll still speak to the rest of the building. But I understand those, you know, especially when you're looking at that elevation directly.
Could you share your screen with that elevation on it, please?
I guess while we're talking about that elevation, do you have any views from the north? You didn't include any views from the north, and which was a little bit frustrating to see the relationship of that building to Braun Court, which is a very kind of treasured part of that the Carytown area. You do talk about it, but there's no views. I don't mean by an elevation, but a 3-dimensional view.
Yeah, we'd be happy to create, you know, more views. It wasn't with any intention, for sure. You know, it was
Just
kind of
typically, the design review board likes to see context around the site. So, you know, where the buildings are that are near it and what that relationship is, both height and land wise. So just for future reference.
And Tamara, I think the other reason I would love to see that is just what the relationship on the ground is back there, how it feels to be a public person parking in public parking. There's an open space that is, I think, meeting the requirements, but is that space usable and comfortable? Because it's enough area that it actually could be for a little bit of resident use. And it just feels like it's sort of stuck in between things, and wondered if there were any ways to make that a more meaningful and usable public space within the development. I know you're juggling parking and all of those things, but that's one of the questions I had is like, how do you envision that being an asset to the community?
I think that the main use it will be is probably for folks sitting out in a sort of a picnic table like area. But it's a requirement under the code more than a probably amenity to the building, because we have the roof deck amenity that's going to be a lot nicer. But it doesn't meet the open space requirements under the code. It just means that we have that amenity as well as the porches that are available for tenants that I think will be used more widely, as well as the inside space.
Jack, can you please go to the site plan so everyone can see what we're talking about?
I think, Lori, I take your point, you know, that we need to program that a bit more. You know, I think if we think about seating, possibly a little shelter, you know, something that can occur back here, for better or worse. I know, Jennifer, we've talked about this could likely be a place where people have a smoke, you know, I mean, we need to situate that, and we'd rather it not be on the street. So our thought is that this becomes sort of a yard for the resident group. But you're right, for now, it is a bit of a placeholder where we're really just trying to hit our square footages. So we do need to get back into the design there and think a bit more about how that functions.
Just to clarify, that's all public parking, is that right? So it's also a public gathering spot? That's not for residents, from what you said.
Correct.
You know,
It's
the whole.
fully-
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. So it's currently, as you probably know, a public parking lot. And so as part of our community engagement process from a couple years ago, what we heard strongly from the community, well, we actually heard the whole full spectrum of you shouldn't have any parking on this site to you need to preserve as much parking as you can and don't get rid of any of our parking. But we support affordable housing here. So we're really trying to be a compromise and meet all those expectations by preserving as much parking as we can. It's actually going down from about 50 spaces to 18. We might be able to get up to 19 or 20 as we reconfigure things, but that's really what we're trying to do is keep as much parking as we can while making it a space that it makes sense for the residents as well.
I know you're sort of in a push-pull with that. The city wants to minimize parking, but I assume that would be paid public parking. So,
Correct. Yeah.
So is there any gesture toward, I mean, there are going to be residents who have cars there and they won't be able to park in those. Is there some consideration for parking availability in like the Ann Ashley structure or something? I hate to concentrate on parking, but having a parking lot adjacent to a building downtown Ann Arbor, I know what a challenge that can be for control.
Yeah, the intent is actually to very likely it'll be a leased space to the DDA, and the DDA will be the one that manages the actual parking itself. But the intent is to actually have 2 dedicated spaces for electric vehicles that are shared by residents. What we find with our single adult population at our sites that we own as well as that Avalon own is very few people have vehicles. And so that would give people the option of not having their own personal vehicle and having to pay for that insurance and have that cost. And so we'd have these shared vehicles that are just for the residents.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Getting back to the glazing on the north or lack of glazing on north and west, it's where the 2 stair towers are. And for security reasons, it would sure be great to get some natural light into those spaces. And I wondered if the 0 lot line fire separation requirements are the same on the west as they are on the north, and if there might be opportunity to get some glazing in at least I guess it's the southwest stair tower.
Yeah, we take that point. I think we can. We just know it's going to be a little pricey, but it's definitely not impossible. And we do like the idea of light into those egress paths. Encourages more use, like you said, a little more secure. And you know, it would enliven those edges. Maybe we can, play with the rhythm of it, or figure out what we can do.
I was going to make the same comment, and I think on the north one you could put it in the east end of it. I think, right? The east end of the wouldn't have to be the north side.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Which wouldn't have the lot line issue there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rating have to be to put glazing in that 2 hours? To put glazing
I believe
in
so. Yep. I believe so. It'd probably be a hollow metal type situation, but we don't need active air there, so I think we could figure it out.
Well, the simplest solution, although you're introducing something else, is to use rated glass block.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the brick area could just, anyway, but I agree, getting some natural light in would be good.
Yeah.
I have a couple thoughts on the view from the corner. I think the eye level view from the corner, maybe. If you could go there.
Can you see? I just pulled it up. Can you see it?
No.
Not yet.
Oh my gosh. This is new to me. It feels like the format's a little different. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, we got it. Okay, so I think in general, I think it does respond well to its context. Maybe it'll come back, it just vanished. In terms of the scale of the lower portion of the building and the lightness of the upper portion of the building, to me, they are two very different buildings. The bottom section has very nice proportions. I like the treatment of the windows, the patterns you've developed. The top, aside from the yellow, really has not much in common with that to tie the two together. And so while I think the distinction between the base and the top is nice and helps it fit its context, I wish that either the language on the bottom could extend a bit more on the top or vice versa, so they worked together more cohesively. It almost looks from this view like you're looking at a different building that's behind this building. That was the intention.
I agree with that a little bit, and or quite a bit. And it's almost like when you look at the lower facade, you're looking at the charcoal gray and gold or orange building slightly behind the brick, and you might think of the upper part as being the same charcoal gray and orange extending up. Instead of such a drastic difference between the very light palette on the top and the darker palette on the bottom.
Gary, are you suggesting that the concrete panelized system be a similar value or color to the gray? Is that what you're saying?
I said that might help, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had some of this. I had slightly different take on this. I understand, you're trying to do with the color and pulling it down, but I agree with the comments that were just made that it seems a little, it's like a gesture. I think you have put in a little bit of nice detailing into the brick, which is, very contextual with what's around it, but it's also not, it's still modern, but I appreciate some of the detailing you put in, the capping and a little bit of soldier course at the bottom and the sills. I would get rid of the orange in those window panels. And actually, I think it's just what Gary, I think if I understood what Gary just said, that's just pulling a little bit more of a muted palette up above. But to keep the base a little bit more quieter, contextual to that area. And then, but, I like the liveliness of the upper part. I love color and bringing color into downtown, but it just seems a little bit, this needs like a little more work.
So if I understand it correctly, the rain screen on the upper portion, those panels will be attached, and because it's a rain screen, they don't necessarily have a closed reveal or they're not abutted. There's a slight gap. So if you got up close, you could actually see through to the presumably dark rain screen. Are you going to have surface fasteners that would be visible, or will these be hung without a visible fastening?
Yeah, both options are possible, Gary. We have done, the interesting thing is these are exposed fasteners on this project, and you really don't even know. They match so closely, and it's a full shop drawing process, so you don't even really pick up on them, and that is a more affordable option. So I expect that we would expose fasteners, but it would be in keeping with what you see here. They come from the manufacturer, they match, they're durable, but they do have a hung option. The system just gets a little deeper and a little more costly.
I do like projecting frames on the upper level.
Just as a question to relate to what I've seen already in town, is this system, the range screen system, similar to what Fitzsimmons is building on Miller or the Morningside development down in Lower Town? Are those range screen panels? Is that how you define? I'm asking actually the rest of the panel, because you LBBA may not be familiar with the two projects I'm talking about, but they are panel systems like that. And I wonder if that's what we're going to be observing. Everybody know what I mean by the Fitzsimmons building?
Yeah,
I don't
think
know
it
if they're
is.
range screens or not, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
They look, it's large panels.
Mm-hmm.
And the Morningside buildings, which are really taking over the corner of, what is it, Maiden Lane or Wall Street, Maiden Lane and Plymouth, that's a sea of that same kind of panel. I'm wondering if that's what we're observing. I'm going to pay more attention to those now. There's nothing but those panels on those buildings.
Jack, so are the upper levels the white panels we see? You mentioned Swiss Pearl. Is that under consideration there?
Yep, that's the manufacturer of the other project of ours that I've been showing you. Those are Swiss Pearl, and then that's actually a mix. And we went to Silbonnet on the side. It's a little more affordable, but same thing. It's integral color, and the material is the same all the way through. It's not a cement panel that's painted. This is, the full panel is that color.
We used Swiss Pearl on a museum project recently, and it's really high quality, real precise, good fastening system, and it's a great product.
We love the shop drawing process too, Dick.
Yeah.
It's, it allows for a lot more control and, like you said, really precise install.
And looking at the south facade on the upper levels, I know you're worried about sun exposure in those areas, but I wonder if you've done a shade analysis and if those sunscreens are going to be as effective as you want them to be. It seems like they're only going to work midday during a high sun in the summer, and then that south facade will take a beating from sun exposure. So have you looked at other options for screening those upper level windows?
We've not dug in that deep on that yet. For now, These are sort of placeholders, and we're even exploring the possibility of doing PV on those canopies, which we thought would be interesting, but no, to optimize location depth, we haven't gone to that level yet, but we will. That's a good note.
And I guess it would be good to note that we have a green consultant on the project who's advising on sustainability, and there will be a complete energy model done that'll include sun analysis. So I think that's something that we'll continue to explore.
One thing I wanted to point out that we don't often see that I really like about this are the sort of vertical breaks that you have. In the lower three levels, they're equally spaced in 3 bays. The upper levels have it too. They don't align with the lower, which at first kind of bothered me, but I've grown to like it. But those horizontal visual speed bumps are kind of nice. And I like that. That's a nice feature.
It's something that we do often, I think, kind of in urban landscape. I think it does help speak to a true old neighborhood in a way.
Yeah.
It just helps break it up visually. Yeah.
I think
we have
elevations, are they reflecting that those gaps are dropped actually, which I really like also. I think your elevations show them going.
Oh, are they just straight?
Straight.
Oh, yeah.
Which just which doesn't look nearly as nice.
Yeah, you're right. Those should drop down. That's just a drawing error. Thanks for pointing that out.
But I agree with Dick about same thing. I was like, what? Shouldn't those line up? And then it's like, no, they really shouldn't.
No, there is
Nice.
an intention to the two pieces feeling different, but I hear the group, there could be more of a tie, whether it's in proportion or color. We can continue to refine that.
Has there
Especially-
been any consideration for using the open space as an alternative to usable public gathering space? Because there is some of that around the neighborhood, using it for stormwater management and collection. It may not cover all of the quantity, but to have that as kind of a performing landscape within the project would be a nice demonstration, bring some more intense green to the area.
I think that'd be great, Lori. I think it doesn't, from my understanding, hit their mark for what open space is. I think it needs to be sort of usable. Right, Ashley? I mean, or at least occupiable. But I mean, I think that'd
that's
be
true.
great if it could be a little more depressed, and have sort of a garden, rain garden piece. Because we will have some stormwater work to do on this site. It's pretty tight. There's not a lot of open area here, so we could ask, but I at least from what we've heard so far, I think they want it to be occupiable.
Thank you. John has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to have to leave soon, but I wanted to make some comments. I love the project. I love the public housing project being right downtown, right next to the market. And that is awesome. I love the shared zip cars, the electric zip cars that I understand for the tenants. That's great. I, however, agree with Lori and Gary that there seems to be a sharp, jarring view between the lower and the upper. And I think that Gary had a good idea, if that was darker. I do love the brick tying in with the architectural building that's right next door. So I really think that, I think this is just my first impression that the bottom is great and the top, well, I may need to get used to it. But I think if you can tinker with it, and it sounds like that you're planning to do that. I am a representative from the Art Commission, so I would like to speak a little bit about those brick recesses that you're planning for public art. I think it's great, and I don't know what your plan is. Jennifer does exceptional outreach, so public art is a hot button. You have a number of recesses, so you can kind of spread it around a little bit. And I would encourage you to think about a kind of a rotating type of gallery. And rather than a mural that's on the building, and I imagine you're planning to have something attached to the building, that there are these high pressure laminate panels. I know that's produced in New York, that they're awesome. And if you could kind of take a cue off of Embracing Our Differences. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's a public art project that encouraged a local artist, from grade school to penny stamps to practicing, artists to submit art, and they then transferred it to these large canvases, which are then placed in parks through the summer. And it's just awesome. They have tours. But what I really like that they have done is when the show is down this month, they have looked for places that would want to adopt that art, those canvases. And so they're going into, Eastern Michigan University, the University of Michigan. So all of this artwork that's done by local artists, I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily local, but all levels of artwork, and it's produced and it's displayed, and then it's distributed in the community. And next year, there's going to be more artworks. And you might want to think about in adopting that kind of a process. And particularly if you use these high pressure laminate panels, you could put them there. They're not going to be there forever. So, but again, I would, encourage you to, I don't need to do that. Jennifer knows how to do that so well. So she gets the outreach, get everyone in. One question I did have is that at one time I thought, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, wasn't there a plan to have some sort of place for artists, practicing artists that would get you wanted to have a creative community where you're going to have artist tenants, and then there were going to be galleries below. Was this the project, Jennifer, that you were planning?
Yes. So that is one of our design ideas and use of space ideas. So we're still working with the community to see if those ideas hold and if that's what we want to do. And so that first floor space that's not dedicated to the residents, it could be gallery, it could be a cultural space, it could be a mixture of different uses, it can be additional community space. And we're looking at the possibility of having half the units dedicated to and reserved for people who are in the creative field. You don't necessarily have to be making a living doing that, but people who that's something that they're passionate about or that they may be living doing. So yes,
awesome.
This is that site. Yep.
Awesome. I think it's great. But in any event, to me, it's a spectacular project. I would tweak with the top of it a bit. But I mean, the pluses far outweigh any of the small criticism that I might have. And I love the recessed bricks as kind of a public art gallery, and would encourage you to test out a rotating kind of gallery along the lines of embracing our differences. So that's all I have. Thank you so much. I apologize. I have to go pick up my wife. I'm so sorry, but thank you for including me. This is awesome. And by the way, with the Art Commission, we're willing to help in any way we can to suggest ways of how you might want to deal with it. Whatever we can do, we stand ready to help.
Well,
thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, John.
Hi, John.
Hey, John. I think I had just sort of a small comment, but and I'm not sure what you could if you could accomplish it, but I really hate seeing an office on a street, right on the street like that. It just seems like whenever we have those downtown, people just pull their shades, and it's not any, even a conference room, usually you can look in and you can see people, and but it seems like offices typically will just push something up against the window and pull their shades down. So I don't see, I know you're working on a pretty small footprint, and I don't see any obvious way to do that, but I just wanted to make that comment.
I totally hear you on that you seem, those offices always seem to be either empty or sort of closed off. I think here that's the project or the property manager. So the idea is they've got some eyes on the street and the entryway, and it's more about kind of visual connection and coverage. So we'll talk to Avalon and see, because I do take your point. You'd rather have something more outward facing along those streets.
It's a small office, but
yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've been by our site at Miller Manor, but one thing that we did is we put pictures, so the glass is there, but we I don't know how they did it. They put some kind of laminated pictures on there so that you can see out, but people can't really see in. And then there's different visuals of what people are seeing from the street side. I don't know if that would be something that you think would be useful here. We haven't really talked about it, but it just occurred to me while you said that.
Like it's another art opportunity.
Right, exactly. It's another art opportunity. Yep.
I have a comment. I'm sure the outlier here and the non-architect in the group, but back to the comments about whether the upper floor should be darker. I'm going to go against the grain and say I appreciate the fact that the upper floors are lighter, and it is in the context of something else on that block. The project that goes from Main Street over to what is it, 4th. The buildings that another Fitzsimmons had developed it, but the lower part, yeah, you see the buildings that face each other that are northwest of this building on the same block. They have the lower part there. The lower part is brick, the upper part is light color. And I've always, as driving by, I mentally thought that's actually pretty cool. When you're during the day, the light upper floors tend to sort of go away against the sky. If they were dark color, I think they would loom. And so again, I'm the going against the grain, but I like the notion if you're driving around to look at that project, the light colors don't dominate. The brick really stands out, and the light colors during the day just sort of fade into the sky. I would hate this project, personal, to have that upper floor be very dark. I think already you have it sort of looming, if I can use that term, over the brown court to the north and whatever that building is to the west. Just for what it's worth, I don't know that I would agree with that whole upper level being dark.
Well, I would agree with you on that too. I think it's a solution to tying the top and bottom together, but it has its drawbacks. And I think I would agree that the lightness of that is welcome when you're adding that much mass to this intimate neighborhood.
Is a solution to bring the white down to where the gray is, as opposed to bring the gray up to where the white is?
I would say not. I sort of like the dual existence too. I agree with Bill that this neighborhood was warehouses and it grew organically as the need arose, and so there's a bit of a hodgepodge. And the marketplace building across 4th has the white swan element, and then a more contemporary building behind in that silo element, and it's a nice mixture of architectural elements. So I agree. I sort of like it the way it is, and I do like the tie of the similar color from the lower 3 floors to the upper 3 floors. Those two elements are so different, but the orange color, if it stays orange, is a really good tie, I think, between the two. So I like the solution. I think it works pretty well and is responsive to that warehouse district of Carytown.
It seems like we all kind of generally really like this project, and it's just some balance of how much they tie together. I've been thinking that orange at the lower, it's especially with all the art you're talking about, seems like it's going to be quite busy, and not that I dislike what I'm looking at, but just seems like you're going to have art all, around, which will be wonderful, or awesome, as John says. But
I think we have some ideas. I mean, I think these are all, it's kind of, there's some different perspectives here, but I could see less of the orange at the lower point, so there's still some tie, but maybe it's a little jumpy as it is. And I think Lori, you were talking, when you were talking about the upper level, maybe a little bit more about proportion, or, you know, these are kind of punched openings, whereas the first floor has these tied together things. So maybe they can speak to each other a bit more, but then there's also support for them feeling kind of different. So I'm hoping we can land somewhere in the middle. And I don't mean to misinterpret, you know, what we're hearing, but I've got some ideas personally kind of brewing.
That's great. One thing that you mentioned is something that or maybe this isn't what you meant, but that's been in my mind, is the kind of thickened frame around the punched windows having kind of a similar response to the edges of the brick on the lower level, something where like even if it's a different proportion, the detail kind of picks back up in some way. On the color, so I think this is a really, it looks like a very quality building. It looks like it's, you know, market rate housing. It doesn't look like affordable housing like you're seeing pop up in other cities. The one thing that makes me hesitant on the color is that is one of the things that I feel like I'm seeing over and over and over again in Chicago and elsewhere, this kind of, oh, we'll make it playful and then you'll think it's nicer than it is somehow. And I'm worried about the timelessness of it. That's my concern, is that, you know, what will this be in terms of the timelessness? Because the neighborhood has endured the test of time in terms of the quality of the materials and the character. So maybe a little less might be a little more sustainable for that over time. I like what you just did.
If we go back just for a second to the north and west facades, those two, the solutions you've mentioned aren't particularly, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, on the left-hand side, the brick with the panels above, those are basically all in the same plane, aren't they? Right at the lot line? There's no setback? Is that right?
The north side, yeah, at the north side, you know, aside from the backyards of the buildings there. At the alley side, they're more visible. So those are a more likely sort of art space.
I know there's discussion about having art on those upper floors. Having mural just done recently, on the west side, you have an alley. You could run a boom truck up from that and do some work on it. But you're going to be able to see that from Main Street. You're going to be able to see that upper part. That part is going to be very visible from Main Street over the adjacent buildings. Same thing to the north. The buildings on Braun Court are basically story and a half buildings. They go up about to that point, and that's it. So the main view from people coming and going from Carytown is this wall that is going to be, you can do it, you can run a swing stage or something and do a mural in the upper part, but I'd like to see Jennifer and everyone else address just what will happen on that, on particularly that wall in the upper part of the west. If it is guaranteed to be a mural, that's great. If there's some other kind of system, I'm not an architect, but something that will make sense. I think John Kotarski made some suggestion. Maybe he was talking about those recessed brick panels there, or maybe some art or something or other to break it up. But that should be an interesting feature. Certainly on the west upper, lower part's going to be against the alley and other buildings, but that north is going to be very, very visible. And it's worth spending a little more time letting us and the public know what's going to be there.
We are also working with the Arts Alliance, which they do both housing development and mixed use, mixed income, all kinds of different development. And they had some very interesting ideas about, similar to John, about the type of material and how you incorporate art in many different ways into the building. And we haven't gotten to that level of specificity, mostly because we want to bring the community into that process rather than make it part of the site plan itself. But maybe there's somehow we can at least show the intent of the space, not what the art itself will look like. Like, I don't want to get ahead of the community and have us, draw some kind of art on there.
Oh, I totally agree, but it brings up another question about that rain screen system. If it is decided that's going to be a painted mural, how do those panels accept paint long term?
It would probably have to be attached, just kind of what John was saying, like a sort of panel system. But I think it'd be good to think about how they attach, if this is going to be part of it, whether it's in the masonry or the panels. We actually just finished a project with a mural that's directly on the brick, and it's beautiful, but it's permanent. The idea of it being able to change and update, I think, is really interesting. So I think we can, Jennifer, maybe study where these things could go without defining what it is yet, yeah.
And I think with that, providing the infrastructure to accept the system, if at all possible, that's readily available, would be great for the, community and the manager and the team to be able to get that to mobilize if it's, 2 years out from construction or something.
I think the idea of it being able to change is really exciting too. If this is sort of an arts-based community and it, maybe there's an ongoing group that has banded together. It's such a great group that you guys have formed, Jennifer, and kind of put together. If that group can continue to kind of, update this on a yearly basis or 2 years and bring in a new artist that has a different voice. And I thought that was really exciting.
I wonder about a projected image, Jack. It obviously wouldn't work during the day, but you've got that great big white wall there. So
that'd be easier on the attachment side for sure.
Yeah.
And the rotation side.
But you do see some really awesome versions of that these days. The projected stuff.
Could I ask a completely unrelated question? Hey, do you have I'm not familiar with Polymer Windows. Have you used those? What that's mentioned on your site?
Those are a highly sustainable triple glaze type of window. There's a manufacturer we've been in contact with, and we've used similar windows on other projects that are trying to achieve a really high level of energy sustainability on the envelope. So that's what that's describing.
So this is the glazing. It isn't the framework. It's the glazing.
The polymer would be the frame of the window, and the triple glazing is the glass.
For some reason, I thought it indicated polymer, and I thought, replacement for glass. Now there's something.
No, it would be the frame, and I couldn't really tell you more about the material than that.
And I have one more detailed thing. The storefront along Catherine and 4th, it appears to be rendered in a way that the frame comes right down to grade. And you might want to consider a little bit of a knee wall there with salt and other de-icer chemicals. It could be pretty rough on aluminum frame. And typically you'll see a 12 or 16-inch knee wall where there aren't door openings.
Good point. It helps with electrical inside and a number of things too. Just drainage planes. So I think sometimes it's a hopeful. We like the idea of it going to ground, but it's not the most rational move. Yeah.
And I think it was Lori brought up that it'd be great to see a view like this looking from the north. Because I really do wonder about the impact on Brown Court to the north.
That was Tamara.
I know you don't have that. That was Tamara. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we don't. We just didn't develop that side, those views yet. As some of you probably know, these views can kind of eat time to get them just right. So, but we will kind of rotate around. I think that's a good idea.
Do you know the dimension, just from one of those houses to your wall? What is that? Is it 10 feet or?
I don't
If
have
it-
the survey. Ashley, do you still have that? I know we were looking at it.
I
somewhat
don't have it
recently.
in front of me, but I can open it in the background and see if I can find a dimension.
Yeah.
for it.
That way, these guys don't have to watch me hunting through the files.
I'm just curious.
It'd be a good thing to have for planning at your next meeting.
Okay.
The main reason we have the 0 lot line on that north side is due to the DTE power lines that you can't see in this rendering, which are very, very close to where our original building design was. For safety reasons, we wanted to step it back away from that Catherine curve, which, you know, pushed us closer to that north lot line where we originally had an alley in there. And now that sort of alley is moved into the middle of the, you know, between the parking lot area and the building, which actually made it a lot more functional, we thought. And it just made more sense when we did that.
I'm really
Challenging
glad that
site.
you pointed that out. I mean, if those are there, then we're not planting trees underneath them. And can you think about that streetscape, having more green at grade with the path on the inside and get some of that to work, because otherwise it's going to be just hardscape. And I think the trees alone would have been nice, but you're probably not going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
To
That's
answer
a
your
good point.
question,
Go ahead.
the one of the Broncourt buildings looks closer to our property line than the other. So the worst case scenario, that one is just over 3 feet away. But the more typical condition is more like 10 to 16.
And there were previous versions, not that this is any relief, but that we looked at like a U-shaped building or something even more sort of densely packed, and at least wanted to allow that court to exist at the back and stuck to the 4th and Catherine sides.
Lori, are you saying you don't like L-shaped trees?
I don't think I've ever met an L-shaped tree.
I'm just looking at the one where the DTE probably cut the branches out so it looks like an L.
Yeah,
This
I
one,
saw one
yeah.
today that was like a T. Yeah, beautiful fall color right now on the T-shaped tree.
I think it could be kind of a cool design problem, though, to figure out something low scale, you know, not you know, something that's tall, some sort of shrub that's still not going to threaten the lines, you know, some raised planters or something.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to work with the DDA on it.
Yeah. Anyone else have comments or questions? We can open it up to any public attendees.
Nice job.
I just wanted to have a chance to just briefly summarize my staff comments. One of them had to do with material. I'm going to encourage LBBA to look at the code sections of the Unified Development Code, which refers specifically to materials that are permitted in this particular location and which are not. So I'm going to encourage you to look at those. With regard to the blank walls, I think it sounds like the western wall would be really ideal for a public art display, whether that's permanent or temporary. The north wall is more challenged. It's right on the property line. I think it would be really hard to do art on that side, and it would be hard to access that side. And so I think that western wall seems to be maybe more appropriate for that type of display. I also want to point out that there will be challenges to constructing a wall directly on the property line unless you have permission from the property owners to the north to use their property for construction. So I'm just hoping that you're thinking about that through the process. That is a challenging endeavor. So you may want to think about that, or maybe make contact with the property owners to the north about obtaining a temporary easement or permission to use a portion of that site. With regard to the height, you're looking at a building that peaks out at 72 feet, probably maybe more like 65 to 68 feet, the top of the cornice level. That's pretty imposing to the area to the north. And so the staff report indicated that you might want to think about some kind of a step down to allow more light to get in, or even create a little bit of a setback, maybe a 5-foot setback to be less imposing.
Jeff,
And then the other one,
build on that comment real quickly. I mean, it would change the plan, but it might be interesting to think about that elevated space on that north end, the outdoor patio space on the north end overlooking the farmer's market versus the intersection. Just something to think about if there was a way that fit the program. It would do that. It would perform the same function of stepping it down, and then it would also give you kind of a nice access to that really lively afternoon or weekend and weekday spot.
Right. And then my last comment had to do with the pedestrian entrances to the building. The design guidelines do call for pedestrian entrances to be clearly demarcated, clearly visible. When I looked at it, the entrances didn't stand out much, and so my recommendation was to consider that and to consider creating a clear delineation about where those entrances are. So that's a quick summary of my comments.
Anything else? All right.
All set.
Yep. So with that, we can move into, I guess public comment comes later. So next up is unfinished business. Do we have anything under unfinished business?
I think don't we typically have a public comment just for the project right now? And then the general public comments at the end of the meeting?
I thought we had two, but the agenda does not outline it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, we did build that in. So we can follow up on that for the next time. Do we have any unfinished business? Okay, we'll move on to communications. Anything on communications?
Nothing for me.
All right, so we are following up the project with a public comment period. Is there anyone who would like to raise a question? You can raise your hand. I'm not able to even see who all is on the call.
There don't appear to be any additional callers at this time.
Okay. All right, I'll just give it one more second, make sure that we don't have anyone calling in on the phone line, which might take a little bit of time to get orchestrated.
Lori, while we're waiting for that, let me know if you wanted me to summarize what I heard in terms of board member comments. I think I was going to summarize those comments immediately after the meeting, and then you all could say, yeah, that summary is accurate, or no, why don't you add this? And then I think you could all sign off on that. I think that was what we were doing a year ago or so when we had done this. Let me know if you want me to do that.
I would think that would be beneficial both to the project team and to the board members and anyone from the public to just kind of get a conclusion, since we always have a little bit of back and forth on different perspectives.
Yep.
So it doesn't look like we have any questions. So Jeff, why don't you go ahead with your summary?
Okay. Tamara started us off.
I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
I just want to jump in real quick because I know when I suggested how folks could join, I thought they could join either online or by phone. So just making sure, is that in fact the case? If someone were raising their hand, you'd be able to see even if they're in the waiting room?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, just wanted to make sure that.
All right, Jeff, go ahead.
Okay. Tamara started us off asking for a three-dimensional view of the north wall to give us a better sense about how that north wall interfaced with the smaller buildings to the north of the site. Gary supported that concept and talked about his concern about this six-story tall blank wall at the property line. Lori talked about the relationship at the ground level to the public spaces, open spaces. Once she wondered how the open spaces will be used. So petitioner was able to talk to us a little bit about that. Bill talked about the public parking that's proposed. I believe it's about 18 spaces on the north side of the first level. He wondered where residents would be able to park and who might be controlling and managing that parking field. Dick talked about the lack of glazing on the stair towers. He thought that getting natural light into the stair towers would be a positive for safety concerns and otherwise. And he wondered whether we can increase glazing on the north and the west walls. Tamara supported that, thought that glazing on the north side too would be beneficial. Bill came up with a suggestion to consider using rated glass block to allow light in and still be able to address fire issues. Lori talked about the view from the corner. She talked about, I believe this was the southeast corner. She talked about the two different sections of the building, the upper section and the lower section. She thought that it had created a nice rhythm. She thought that it might be possible to consider maybe tying both these sections together a little better. I got the sense from the architecture team, the design team, that they would maybe do a little rethinking about that. Gary agreed with that. Tamara talked about the color. She liked the gesture of the brick, which is complementing the historic character of the neighborhood. Tamara thought that the orange, the orange touch might need to be rethought a little bit. And I think that might mean in terms of not necessarily that color versus another color, but how that splash of color is actually presented. Gary had questions about the fasteners. He liked the projecting frames of the upper floor windows. Bill had some questions about the rain screen panels. Dick also talked about the Swiss Pearl, the white panels. He also asked about the shade analysis on the south side, wondering if those shades made a lot of sense. He thought they would really work midday during the peak summer solar season. Other times maybe not as much. And he also talked about the breaking up the side, referring to the indentations as speed bumps. And he thought that was a nice touch, and it helped to break up the facade along the street. Lori talked about or wondered whether the open spaces that are shown on the site could be used also for stormwater management. John really liked the concept. He liked the zip cars. He also agreed with this notion that there's a sort of a sharp jarring contrast between the upper and lower floors. He talked about the brick recesses being great on the north side. He liked the idea of a rotating art gallery, or the building being able to accommodate art that would be rotating. He's familiar with high pressure laminate panels that he thought the petitioner might want to consider. He had a question about a plan for practicing artists, and indicated that the art commission would be happy to engage with the housing commission staff or with the design staff to discuss the ideas of art further. Tamara didn't like to see office uses on the street level in the downtown area. I got a sense that she was concerned about how that interface sort of creates uninteresting space. Bill talked about the upper floor. He appreciates a lighter upper floor color. And he pointed out that the building that Tom Fitzsimmons did on Main Street also has sort of 3 stories of brick, and then an upper floor that is lighter in color. Lori agreed with Bill. Dick also agrees with Lori and appreciated the contrast between the upper and lower floors. Tamara said that it sounds like everybody generally likes the project. Lori indicated brought up the issue of the color, worried about the timelessness, and that indicating that a little less might be better over time. Let's see, Bill talked about the north and west walls, what would happen to those walls, talked about the rain screen system, and wondered whether they can handle murals. Lori talked about the design being, or the building being designed to accommodate art, to accommodate murals, particularly on the blank walls. Bill wondered about the polymer windows, and Dick also indicated that he'd really like to see a view from the north side, and how the 6-story building will interface with the 2-story buildings on the north side, which meant that he was agreeing with Tamara's recommendation. So that's what I have written down. Let me know if I've missed anything.
Just a few things.
Yeah.
There's a robust discussion this time, and it does not reflect more concern on our part about the building. I think in general, everyone was really pleased with what they were seeing. So these are details, and to continue to hopefully make the project better for the community. So with that,
I just have one quick comment, and that is to tell Jeff that how much the taxpayers appreciate that the planning department really is running a low budget operation now.
It's about as low as it's going to get.
Yeah. You could service a furnace while you're there. So that's
okay. Anyone want to call for adjournment, or do I just do it myself?
You could just do it.
Oh, I'm going to do it then. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for your comments and time. Yep. Thank you.